let's look at talking about how to look at data in a different way, right? So both EVOTEK and Dell, I mean, you guys are experts in technology. So if you're thinking about a customer, whether it be the CIO, the CTO, the director of IT, as they think about 2021, how should they be looking at data? What should they be thinking about in their plans going forward this year? We'll start maybe with Aaron.
Well, I think a big challenge now is what I'm seeing with our customers and our clients and things is CEOs didn't particularly care as much as they should. They kind of let the lower, not lower end, but their teams, they let their security teams own this as they should. But at this point in time in our new normal, this is a board level conversation. This is a legal conversation. These are things that they need to be concerned with from the top down. And I think change is slow, but it has to come from management. It has to come from the top down. And that's where the money comes from, the top down as well. So it's not cheap to make these types of changes or to implement some of the, the regulatory guidance that has been put out. And it's definitely a conversation that needs to come from the top down. And it's, I challenge my customers to think about their data. They have to think about it in a different way because, the new disaster is a cyber attack. Disaster recovery is no longer enough. Like the chances of an earthquake, I live in Pittsburgh, we don't get earthquakes or floods or anything, hurricanes, but the chance of a massive large scale cyber attack, that's the new normal. That's like my term of the day, new normal. But go ahead, Ned, what are your thoughts?
Well, I think two, one is a little bit, so first of all, maybe three. So the whole movement, let me say it this way. One of the things that's the most fascinating to me broadly about everything that we're seeing is that our customers are producing and managing and dealing with data that becomes more and more and more valuable as they shift how they go to market. They're competing now around the data sets that they produce, and they're more valuable to steal also, right? So we're seeing this increased surface area of opportunistic crime around what our customers are doing, while the organizations are set up to not support that. They're siloed and everything else. And so that organizational change is the biggest thing that we see. And then when we think about how to respond, you brought up a really good point, Aaron, that hits home, which is when we think about a resiliency plan, it's not a tooling conversation. It's what do you do when? And there's tools that support all those things. But what do you do when you have a plan to respond to an earthquake? That's a really common scheme. I live in Southern California. We have a lot of data centers that are across the coast here. And then we have a lot of backup data centers that are in the next state over in Nevada, because it's on the other side of a fault line. So we're very clear what to do with how to respond to that. But what do you do when there's a different set of conditions? We've got a pandemic. Now I can't get an operator into that facility because they didn't bring their mask or whatever it is, right? And so we have to think very carefully about what our inputs are that inform the architectures and inform our planning. And then I think the third thing that jumped out at me when I think about thinking about recovery isn't enough is back to the point I made before. You can't approach these problems with a point product. You can't say, well, I've got backup, now I can recover. Well, no, you can't. One of the things that we value a lot about our engagements with Dell through the cyber recovery tool set is that it's much more comprehensive. You have a very sophisticated solution that's also very much back to basics. We need to have physical separation. We need to have logical separation. We need to have replication that can go across networks. We need to be able to do things with it when the unexpected happens. And so we love that tool set that we can incorporate into the architectures that start where Aaron started, which was, let's make a decision to do this correctly. So
let's go back. That is great feedback. So we're talking to CEOs. I mean, Aaron, you said it's a board level discussion. It's a top down discussion. And Ned, all those things that you bulleted out, right? Those are decisions that require budget, right? They require budget and time and focus. Let's back up to, I guess, to the legal piece of the data. Is there anything, Aaron, you would say, if I'm an executive leader at a business and I'm looking at data, what is, from a legal perspective, what should I consider? What do I need to make sure that I'm thinking about first? And then once I understand the legal piece of it, All right, now we jump into the technology piece and organizational pieces that Ned was talking about.
Well, I think, Ned mentioned that it's valuable. This is, data is considered the most valuable asset on the planet, more than oil, more than gold. So from a legal perspective, you have to think about how you're going to protect your most valuable asset. And it's not as simple as something that's physical. I mean, data in general it's out there. So for it's very challenging, I find, for a lot of lawyers to comprehend why this is so important. But protecting your data from a legal perspective is going to protect them from fines from the government. It's going to protect them from lawsuits from customers that their data has been breached. They can have, criminal and, other types of lawsuits that are coming to them. So I think this is definitely a new type of legal ramifications that teams are actually, I read an article saying that they're ramping up legal teams with specifics around data protection and data privacy, because it's just gotten so into the weeds, and this is where all the money's coming from. So they have to protect themselves internally from a legal perspective, but also make sure they're protecting their customers and clients. And so the legal teams are actually reviewing their cybersecurity plans to make sure that they're meeting what the government is suggesting. So this is not just, this is a huge topic now for everyone within an organization, and it has to be something that people work together with.
So let's go deeper on that a little bit. And I know to your point about the spend and investment, I mean, I think we've probably all seen the stats of, IT spending's doubled, 20% or more over the last several years because of things like this. How should the legal team and the IT team work together? I mean, because we've talked, Ned brought up the kind of the end-to-end view of organizations. What advice would you give for the legal team and the technology team to work better together?
Well, so I was, like I said, I worked previously before Dell with a large bank in the United States. And what we did when GDPR came out, that was the huge first big privacy thing and they didn't talk too much about security, but there were a lot of data security changes that we had to make within the organization. And we formed a privacy cyber steering committee. So we had, the chief compliance officer, the chief privacy officer, the CISO. We had multiple people on this panel where we met every 2 weeks to discuss how we were going to implement these changes and roll them out. And we really had to go through and dig through all of our technology, all of our, assets and things like that, and really decide what was the most important, what was mission critical to protect, and, what needs to be, secure, isolated, and potentially, put in a vault for if we were attacked, how we would recover and make sure that our customers had maybe not instant, but very quick access to their bank accounts, because that was super important to people. Hopefully that answered your question.
Ned, from your perspective, how do you, what advice would you give to the technology crew of how they should be thinking about it to work across the organization, with the legal teams, with the other organizations that they're not typically used to working with?
So I think Aaron brought up a really good point, which is that as we see this acceleration of value around the data, we've seen an acceleration of regulation around how that data is handled and how it's thought about, whether it's privacy or the liability for mishandling it or all those things. And so that's a very real factor. And so it's such a real factor, and it's so, if you get it wrong, it's such a big problem that everybody in an organization needs to be thinking about it, but they may not have the ability to. So what EVOTEK is doing to support that is we engage with our customers and then start asking questions like, okay, do you know what the regulatory impact is if you move data from one state to another? If you're, for example, if you're involved in gaming in Nevada, you have to be able to demonstrate that the data that you store is stored within Nevada. Does that allow you to replicate? I don't know. We have to see. Does it allow you to leverage a public hyperscaler for a cloud storage? Don't know. Have to figure that out. If you're a medical company, like a hospital chain, and you are storing data and you have stored it incorrectly, what then liability comes to you through HIPAA or whatever else? And so for our own organizational purposes, we keep that regulatory compliance skill set within our security group, just because it seems like where it naturally occurs in the conversations. But we're seeing more and more and more infrastructure focused people being aware of those considerations, and then forming groups like what Aaron described to then make sure that they have a holistic approach to whatever it is they're doing, so that nobody's responsible for killing the company, I guess. So we're seeing that collection, the collaboration accelerate, which is something that's very exciting to me, I guess, is my point.
I guess fear of killing the company can definitely cause people to work better together, I guess.
I like to call it having as many fingerprints on the gun.
Yeah. But no, we're seeing that accelerate, and I'm this is my favorite thing about what's happening. It may sound weird, but this whole collapsing of these silos makes everything a little bit more complex initially, but makes it move much more smoothly for our customers. So I'm glad for that. I'm glad that there are multiple drivers, even though this is not a happy one. You know.